Okay.
For men, males do stuff. So what we accomplished internally is learning how to listen to that feminine part of us that is receptive so that it can inform the work that we do. So that the work that we do is ultimately in service to this whole process of reconnecting to who and what we actually are. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Well, then my question to the room, I guess, basically is, in this male-dominated society, how do we disconnect from that without going Lilith in the opposite direction? How do we disconnect from that and really hear the Creator so that we can be who He intended us to be?
Question.
Intent and desire.
Intent and desire.
Mm-hmm. The strongest thing you have is desire. The word for desire, for will, desire are the same. And it talks about being receptive to the powers of the Creator, allowing them to move in the direction that you should go in.
But I guess what you're saying in a way, what it makes me think of is the doubleness of the task in a way is in those environments that are dominated by, and I'm even thinking of African women and what they suffer through. And yet, most of the ones I've met, there's just a feminine quality about them that I don't really see in this culture very often. So there's just something in them that won't let go of that. And that day will come when that will, I think, find its way out and change it, be respected as it should be, and change the way that continent's going. But so it's the same kind of thing, that even if it's a male-dominated society, you've got the double duty of finding, if you let go of the femininity, then it's all lost. Yeah. And it can be very oppressive. And so a woman, despite all the horror, looks for balance and forgiveness, etc., etc. And yet what happens, I think, too often in our culture, maybe the maleness is pushing women to feel more insecure and isolated from each other and therefore their own being, and that's how you continue to control it. But if you don't fight against that, then we can't. It seems like we can't help ourselves, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and you're right.
So you got to be the tougher one in this.
But when you look at it, look at dominated this culture, Europe.
Well, that's
And when you look at it in other cultures that refused to submit to the domination, or did not, or just not being dominated in such a manner, that doesn't happen, as you described with the femininity of the African. But when you look at it, and when we talk about it, we are actually talking about the America and Europe. And that's where it is, femininity is diminished the most. It's almost like women want the masculine, because that seems to be where the power is.
Yeah.
That seems to be, where everything that moves you forward is. So,
You know what, too, when I'm at work, I think about how I am both male and female, and it takes me to work in both roles in order to make things run smoothly. So I have to be a husband to certain people, be in a husband role to some people at work. I have to be in a friend mode, wife mode, sister, whatever. I mean, it's just not about you being who you are in your role. We have to balance. That's why things start here.
Yeah, it does.
You know?
Desire.
Yes.
See, when you look at what Yeshua, look at Jesus when he walked. it was his sister, his mama, his wife. If you look at the females who were the list, I think it's about 12, maybe 15 different lists of females who were with him.
Mhm.
All of them include those three, and it speaks volumes to me. When you look at the wife, the mother, and the sister,
Mhm.
those are the three closest females in your life. And how you relate to them determines whether or not you can find balance. And even when you look at the preparation for burial, it was not his sister, it was his mom and his wife. And if she was not his wife, she would not have the right to prepare his body for burial, because she had to wash a man's naked body. So the only way she would have been able to do that was to have been his wife. So even in death is how you relate to those who are the feminine who's closest to you in your life. And that determines balance. I mean, think about it. How many times have you heard it said, if this man does not treat his mom or his sister right, he's not going to treat you right?
Yes.
Yeah. How does he relate to them?
Yeah.
That's how he's going to relate to you.
This should be for Steve, really, because last night we were watching the Swedish version of the girl with the dragon tattoo.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
So much
And
better.
the Swedish title of that movie is
Yeah.
Men Who Hate Women.
Yes.
Isn't that something?
Not anything about a dragon tattoo. Men Who Hate Women.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, it just made me think, why do you make a movie like that? What does that say about Sweden or whatever?
Or just how
If
that
they're
movie
willing to
played out
confront it.
versus the American
I haven't
version
seen all the
of it.
three. Well,
I seen all three. I have all three versions of the Swedish
so is he.
series,
Me too.
and just the way it play. You too.
I've seen them all. Yeah.
And just the way that the three movies play out versus the one that came out in America. The one in America, it censored to me a lot of things that went on in the Swedish version, and it's like they cleaned it up,
Yeah.
and they never once made reference to that title, the Swedish title. It never once even dove into it, but in the Swedish version, I think that it did.
And and when you say men who hate women, we go all the way back to what Nick was talking about. Men who hate women because they see something, there is something in that woman that he needs.
yeah. But it was also about her taking back her power. too.
Right. So does that mean that if he sees something in that woman, is he then rejecting?
Yes. See, this is the thing. This is what I believe. When a man is brutal towards a female, when he's brutal towards a female, he's actually expressing self-hatred. And the female who submits to that is actually accepting his self-hatred and also applying it to herself. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But you said earlier this comes out of Europe. I think it comes out of Europe because most of the people who look like me came from Europe. But I almost see it in the Mediterranean. I'm going back to a movie and a book and an author who really I got into in the early 70s was Nikos Kazantzakis, who wrote Zorba the Greek, The Last Temptation of Christ. But that's all about the Greek thing, and that whole sequence in that movie, for example, where the single woman is murdered by the father of the boy who loved her, and she had nothing to do with him. So couldn't deal with those realities. So in the guise of pride, they killed the woman. And it's just that whole killing the feminine that you can't control.
Well, look at
And not giving her the right, not respecting her right to choose.
Islam. It's all about that.
But I'm saying that's not Europe, that's the Mediterranean. So you gotta If you take a trip around the Mediterranean,
Yeah.
But and see, and we're talking about Islam now. When you read the history of Islam, it was
Oh.
different.
Yeah.
It was totally different. When you read, everyone talks about the Sharia law. If you really read it, Sharia law, if you really read Sharia law, it is more beneficial to humanity than it is adverse to humanity. I've read Sharia law, and there are aspects of any law that you don't particularly like. But Sharia law also says that the stranger in your company, not only do you feed him, but you house him and you protect him, even at the expense of your own life. So what I'm saying is that we look at things as they have been manipulated to fit our times, but if you look at the root of it, it's totally different.
You're right. Yeah, I mean, it has Arab and Ottoman culture
Mixed.
smashing down
Yeah.
on top of it.
So
Yeah.
and that's what happens with it. All right, Nicholas, you done? You froze.
And just one more thing I got. The origin of a lot of bad stuff was in Europe, or it comes out of Europe, and it kind of does. But the seeds of that were planted long before Europe became like a global influence.
so is it in Africa?
It just so happens that the type of thought that developed in that country was conducive for perfecting male dominance. It started before that.
Well, what do you mean by before? Are we gonna say
And let's okay.
it
It
all the way back to the
began
source?
where everybody began, which is in Africa. And
Right.
it's funny because my girlfriend Brenda did her Peace Corps volunteer in West Africa, and as anybody who's in West Africa can tell you, especially American women, the men there try to keep you in your place.
Yes.
So it starts then, but actually what they're operating under is a skewed inner sense of how it all is supposed to work. And essentially that's what Europeans are operating under too. It's just taken to the greatest extent in Europeans because of the way that the thought developed in Europe. Or rather, the way that thought developed that produced Europe. Anyway. Yeah. Those African men are, they like to pretend they're in control. But the fact that they're pretending is still indicative of some stuff that needs to change.
Yeah, we have a friend who has a personal experience with that.
I do too.
Anyway,
So I just tell your daughters, beware. Keep their eyes open.
are we good?
We're good.
For now.
Okay.
See you Thursday, fellow.
Yep, I will be in Philadelphia next week. This week. So we will, if you're not going to be there, we will not have class next weekend. All right, I'm finished. If there are no other questions for today.